Good afternoon and happy Black History Month. My name is Kim Massenberg, and I am the Chief Impact Officer at Cara Collective. I'm excited to be in community with you today for this important discussion as part of our Conversations with Cara's series. Over the next hour together, we'll be centering our conversation on trauma informed mental health care. At its core, trauma informed mental health care is an approach that recognizes that trauma is widespread, that it affects how people show up in every space, and that healing begins when systems and individuals prioritize safety, trust, dignity, and choice. At Care Collective, our team cares for the whole person. We never ask, "What's wrong with you?" but rather, "What happened to you?" and "How can we support?" This approach is especially important right now. Many of us are carrying the weight of collective trauma, violence, loss, economic instability, racism, and long standing inequities that have deeply impacted Black communities in particular. And trauma not only impacts your mental health, but your physical health too. It's widely proven that trauma changes critical brain regions that play essential roles in behavior, emotion, and memory. With all this in mind, trauma informed care challenges us not only to rethink mental health services, but to reimagine how we show up in workplaces, schools, financial systems, public health, and everyday relationships. It is why CARE's training team focuses on social emotional skills and teaches love and forgiveness before resume writing and mock interviews. It is why we have a supportive services team and a coaching team who are there for our participants even when life throws curveballs during the first year of their employment. It is also why we lean on more than 30 supportive services partners year round for assistance with food, housing, financial services, healthcare, and more. Today's conversation is about what it looks like to move beyond awareness and into action, how trauma informed practices can dismantle stigma, close gaps preventing access to care, and create pathways to healing that are rooted in community and lived experiences so that people can overcome structural and personal barriers to live healthy, full lives and access the best that life has to offer. I'm honored to bring together an incredible group of Black women leaders who bring expertise in public health, community based care, and direct service, each grounded in a deep commitment of equity and healing. First, we're thrilled to have Patricia Banks, the Executive Director of Sister House, an organization on the West Side that offers a temporary home to women seeking recovery from substance abuse. Additionally, Patricia is a Cara alum and I'm a former staff member since 2007. We're also honored to have Jashawn Hill, Executive Director of Chicago Survivors, an organization that provides supportive services to family members of homicide victims. Jashawn is also a Cara alum from 2007. And finally, we're joined by Dr. Ige, Commissioner of the Department of Public Health for the City of Chicago. Her leadership advances mental health equity and addresses systemic barriers across our city. Thank you all for being here and for the work that you do every day. All right, ladies, we're going to start with our why. What is your why behind dedicating your career to trauma informed care and healing? Dr. Ige, I'll start with you first.
Hello, Queens, and hello, community. It is so exciting for me to be here in the same room with powerful women doing great stuff. And I am very honored to be a part of the conversation. My why. In 2023, when I was approached to serve as commissioner of the third biggest city, I was in a very cushy job in a foundation, enjoying the good life. But I chose to come to Chicago. And then people ask me the question, why all the time? One, because I will be the first Black woman to serve in this role in an institution that has been around for 200 years. That was one of the reasons why. Number two is that I was sick and tired of everybody telling me that it is impossible to make the systems better for people of color, that it was impossible to improve health outcomes, that it was just a given that Black people die. I was like, no, they don't. They don't have to. And the reason why is because I was born and raised in sub-Saharan Africa, where again, it was the same rhetoric. Black lives were disposable. Black's life, it was not the area where people centered attention and resources. So I wanted that to change. I wanted people to see that we are part of the solution, that we are ready to roll up our sleeves and solve problems. And I wanted to see that this is what Black excellence looks like. and that if every Black person in the city was operating at their full potential with the right kind of support, Chicago would be the better for it. And I am so happy to be in this room with powerful women doing great stuff and making that dream so tangible and so real. So thank you for having me.
Thank you again, Dr. Egan. Absolutely. Patricia Banks will bring your voice in next.
Hi, I'm Patricia Banks, and I too am honored to be here today. Mine is really simple because I feel like I've been called to do this work. Yes, and I just feel that I had a lot of self inflicted growing pains, and I just kind of feel like I was able to make it through, and that God has blessed me to be able to do so. I'm a firm believer that, and unfortunately, that some have to die for other to live. And I also believe that those that are chosen to live have a purpose behind that. And I just don't believe that I would have the quality of life that I have if I did not reach back and just um, continue to help other people. As they say, you have to, give it away to keep it.
That's real, PB. I appreciate that. Just Sean, let's round us out.
Awesome. And I too am so honored to share this space with each and every one of you, my sisters, amen, who are standing on the front lines of such a work, because this is truly a work and a calling, as Patricia said. So for those who don't know me, because that's what we do at Cara, my name is Jashawn, and I hope we motivate you to action around these matters of trauma and community. And so that is my why, is that I am born, bred, and groomed right here in the city of Chicago, South Side in particular. And the things that I witnessed says that truly I am a survivor. And I was able not to just live a life to say I'm a survivor from a negative tone, but there is an art to resilience in survivorship that I have learned as I've walked this walk, as being a member of my community, but also being a part of the solution. And so that's why I decided, after experiencing my own exposure to community violence and losing a brother to violence in community, losing cousins to gun violence in community, peers and friends, and witnessing it firsthand, that I was not going to stand by and just let this be the narrative. And therefore, I decided to become a social worker, a clinician, a mental health practitioner, and a leader in social services in this day and age, because our generation will not change unless we determine that we will be agents of change. And this is my why. And this is what gives me fire and passion every day when I see my community getting better, despite what they put on TV. Yes, yes.
Bring in, Sean. You're going to get us all fired up today. All right, now. All right, to ground us in today's conversation, I want to zoom out for a moment. It's 2026, and our country continues to grapple with deep inequities from centuries ago that disproportionately impacts Black communities. With that context in mind, I love by start asking all of you, why is trauma-informed mental health care more urgent now more than ever, especially for our Black communities? Jashawn, I'll bring your voice in first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's trauma informed first, and then we need to be trauma conscious, right? Because when we get the information, there needs to be a phase of application that creates this consciousness of trauma, which is in the Black community. And it is so pervasive that we have normalized it, because not to normalize it would just keep you in this heightened state, right, around what you are living in. And so as a community, especially a Black community that have come from historical traumatic exposures from slavery until this very moment, we must be informed of it. So then we're empowered with the tools and the resources to be a part of solutions, rather than just stay stuck in the narrative of a problem. and be a part of that solution with action and information and education and being in spaces like this and witnessing this so you can apply what you learn for a change in our communities. So information and then become conscious. Be, I don't like to say woke all the time. Consciousness. Amen. That's what I'm going to say.
Take that consciousness, absolutely. PB.
Thank you, Jashawn, and I totally agree with that. And I think it's really prevalent, and it's important because it is happening with such a young generation now. More and more, we are finding our young brothers and sisters that are experiencing trauma. They're the victim of trauma that has happened around them and not gotten help for it, not being recognized, not seeing it, ignoring it. And they don't know what to do with it. They know that oftentimes what is going on in their life is not feeling good to them or normal to them, but they do not know where to go to get the help. They do not know exactly what it is that they're feeling. So I totally agree about educating our community with the different layers of trauma, the different severity of trauma, and what it looks like in all different areas.
Thank you, PB. Dr. Ige, would you round us out?
We start with the individual and then the community. Individuals are going through stuff that they don't even understand. Why am I feeling this way? And that in itself is a reason why trauma consciousness is important. Why you are feeling this way, you are not just an individual who has been exposed to trauma. You are also an individual who is living with intergenerational trauma. Your family is carrying this trauma that they have experienced. And then we're living in communities that have been inundated by trauma.
Mm-hmm.
How will I, as an individual, behave if my parents and my grandparents have brought me up with the trauma that they have carried? And then now I'm facing my own trauma. So that is something that we need people to understand. Intergenerational trauma.
Mm.
Then we layer on top of that racial trauma. And then we layer on top of that community level trauma. As the mother of two young men, they were not just dealing with how do I deal with living in a community where I am afraid of being shot? How do I deal with people looking like me who are being targeted? How do I deal with being in a school where they're telling me you're going to end up in jail? How do I deal with constant media exposure to people who look like me being targeted for different reasons? So when I feel the way that I do, or when Black people feel the way that they do, or express how they're feeling, without understanding this context in which we're living in, how can we provide the right support? So it is so important that we understand not trauma just informed, but trauma consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I say to people all the time, if you have survived an assault, if someone taps you on the shoulder, the way you respond is different from someone who has not ever experienced an assault. If you don't know that about that person, you don't know that history, you don't know their context, like, oh, why are you so defensive? Oh, why are you so sensitive? You're blind, you're ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that excuse anymore. It is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that everybody understands what trauma looks like, including those who are experiencing trauma, and that our communities and those who are responsible for making the communities better. So that's where I'll stop. It is very, very imperative to healing and resilience that we are trauma conscious at every level.
Thank you very much for that. Absolutely. As we talk about urgency, right, it's impossible to ignore that barriers that still exist that prevent so many people from getting care. The Chicago Health Atlas reported that nearly 33% of Black Chicagoans share that they have an unmet mental health need or are in serious psychological distress. While we know that resources is still a huge barrier, right? Stigma often stands in the way as well. Dr. Ige, from your perspective, what's at the root of mental health stigmas and what progress have you seen in changing the narrative around mental health?
Um, I will start again from our own context and work outwards. As people of color in this country, we have been blamed for all kinds of things. When things happened, in our community, you said, "Oh, this is what they do." When things happen in other community, they will say, "Oh, it is because of mental health." We don't get the luxury of understanding. So people have learned to cover up the weaknesses or what we perceive as weaknesses or issues because we have to be 10 times better. We have to be 10 times stronger to compete. So there is that history where people feel like it is somewhat of a weakness to express that you're having a hard time. And if we are not able to acknowledge that I'm having a hard time, how do I seek care? So trauma, the stigma that we're seeing is also comes from the context in which we are where Black people are not allowed to fail. They're not allowed to show weakness. They're not allowed to express their emotions. And that our parents and our communities as a survival, a coping strategy, have made it a mission to ensure that we show up strong and we show up resilience. And like in my days, we had to walk 20 miles and we had to go through all of this. And then this is what you need to survive in this country. And we hunker down and bury our heads because that is what our parents have had to do to survive. Now, that generational silence about mental health struggles and the issues that until I heard my mother say that she had clinical depression. I couldn't deal with my son having clinical depression and anxiety attacks. We have to talk about this issue. I share about this all the time. I am a medical doctor. I have had my own challenges with mental health. My parents have had their own challenges with mental health. I have teenagers who are struggling through mental health, so that it becomes easier for others to acknowledge that what you're feeling is not strange. Misdiagnosis and systemic bias. We just talked about trauma consciousness. If you go to see a provider who cannot relate to your story, who cannot understand, who does not have that trauma-informed lens, they are going to provide care and services for you that does not resonate. It is not culturally appropriate. And we don't have enough of those providers that are culturally competent and trauma conscious for us to get the care in the way that we want in our community. That's also a part of the stigma. So I don't want to go. And then the healthcare system has not done a good job of elevating mental health to the same status as physical health. For some reason, we just think it is, a less, important area. It is not compensated the same way. So these are all the layers that makes stigma so entrenched. But I think it starts with us normalizing that emotional, psychological distress is not a moral failing, it's not a personal weakness. Jashawn started by saying what happened to you. And I think that helps to remove the individual from the conversation and us start understanding the trauma that this individual has had to deal with that has led here. Once we change our perspective, I think we can start peeling back the stigma and people feel a bit more comfortable. And I think things are getting better, but we need to do more in telling our own stories and letting people know that you are not different. It's not a moral failing, it's not a personal weakness. And that is how we start shaving off the stigmas.
No, thank you for that. One part of it, you can also start to shift stigma is to recognize, to your point, Dr. Ige, a person's lived experiences. Patricia and Jashawn, your work is deeply grounded in listening to and learning from the people that you serve. How do the lived experiences of the women at Sister House and the families supported by Chicago survivors really shape your organization's approaches to care? PB, would you go first?
Yes. So it is very important to recognize what happened to you. And so that's where we start when the individual comes in struggling with addiction to drugs and or alcohol. We recognize that it's layers of pain and trauma that has induced that addiction. And they actually use the drugs to try to mask that pain. So the pain came way before the addiction did. And you ladies said it, you hit it on the head when you have to ask them, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. So we have a behavioral health specialist, Jamila. She sits down and have one-on-ones with the ladies when they first come into Sister House. And that is one of the questions that she poses to them, like, what happened to you? And it takes time because as a drug and alcohol counselor, I recognize things too. And so when I sit with the ladies, sometimes I hear things and me and Jamila may be talking and we may be having a file transfer. And she was like, oh, she didn't share that with me, and it may be something that they did not share with me. But the fact of the matter is, I think that the ladies start to feel that they're in a safe space where they can share with one of us. And it really doesn't matter who or how we get there, but if we can help them to recognize that the trauma is one of the major aspects of why they have not been able to stabilize themselves and not use drugs and alcohol, and that a lot of it, they caught a lot of things that didn't belong to them, you know. Like you say, you talk about generational behaviors and things like that. And because you did not, that's the family that you grew up in, and that's what they were doing, that's what you expected, and you thought it was okay until you went outside and saw, no, that's not okay. But now what do I do with it? We have Miss Vicky. She actually works for Cara. And so Miss Vicky comes and she does workshops with our ladies, the social emotional workshops, letting them know that it's okay to cry, scream, shout, do what you have to do, to dump that garbage, to shed those bags that you've been carrying around with you. Um, yeah, just when you think that you've heard it all, you hear something else, you know. Um, yeah, we do what we can to work with each one of them one on one to get their story, and I tell the ladies all the time that, one of the things that um, they made the commonality may just be that they all have been abusing drugs and alcohol. That may be the only thing that they share that's in common. They come from all different walks of life, and one person's journey is not theirs. One person's road of recovery is their own. One person's trauma is their own. But what we do say is what happens here stays here, because we want it to remain a safe place. And only if they can learn to start trusting again is that they will, dump the garbage.
You're absolutely right. Jashawn?
Wow, Miss Patricia, so much. My heart is just full because the lived experience for me is the power for me in particular as a practitioner. I love narrative therapy practice, which is so much rooted in storytelling, right? And I get the gift of witnessing their story and helping them to identify what I call butterfly moments, because what we get trapped in is what you were saying, Miss Patricia, this single story. There is danger in the single story. And what trauma has done to so many, especially in our community, is kind of locked us into this single narrative when there's so much depth and so much richness to the lived experience of a survivor. And when someone can witness your story with you and engage in that with you, one of our mantras at Chicago Survivors is that you are not alone. And when I hire people and bring them on, I let them know, I mean that. You're not there just to be holding up a wall. You're not there to just be filling out an intake form. You are there to ensure that they know they are not alone. Because when community knows that the village is backing them, my God, is nothing that we cannot accomplish collectively. So the lived experience is really the power. It's like the fire that forges forward like goodness and possibility and hope, right? That is in there. And when you can rescue those words and those moments from their lived experience to say, wow, you overcame that and you're still here. Tell me. And some of what we do is inherit other people's stories, like what you were saying, Patricia, and this intergenerational, trauma. I said that doesn't even sound like it belongs to you. That sounds like that belongs in another time. What are we gonna do in this time? Who are we in this day? Who are we in this era, right? And when we can open that up, there is so much healing in hope. There is so much healing. And when I work with young people and this narrative of they can't see themselves past 18 and 21 and all this in the Black community, I come to beg to differ, because all they need is one to witness, hear the story, open a pocket for possibility, and watch what comes out of that person. And I'm telling you, this is where the healing is. So the lived experience, me as a survivor myself, hearing another survivor like this right here, what I'm feeling in this space, it's something that words cannot express, and nothing in any media or stigma can suppress or oppress. It cannot when we come together in these ways. So for me, the lived experience is what causes me to keep going. The stories after the trauma, because that's post-traumatic growth. If you're not familiar with that, that is the way we make meaning after something so terrible, so tragic, that it almost blows the mind of the listener. You're just like, oh my God. Oh my God. So I'm going to move on, Kim. I could probably stay here for some ages and stages, but I want to make sure we keep forging in this conversation. Thank you.
Deshaun, I promise you, we are all good. We are here today to have a conversation, but I want to build on that. So many traditional mental health systems weren't designed with those lived realities that you and Patricia and Dr. Ea have been talking about. So Patricia and Deshaun, again, can you share about a time when someone you serve have transferred their life because of the trauma informed support that they received at Sister House and Chicago Survivors? Patricia, would you take this one first?
Yes, gladly, because I am very elated to talk about one of our residents. I'm just going to refer to her as Lisa S. And so Lisa came to Sister House, and it was her first time in treatment and her first time in recovery. And so Lisa was an alcoholic, and she had a son, and her son was murdered right before she decided to. It's actually what helped her decide to get sober, the death of her teenage son. And it really hurts on any level when you lose a kid, but he actually was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she said that Lisa, had just gotten off the phone with her son. And so she was on the phone talking to him. And she said that she was drinking and drinking and drinking. And so got the call about what happened to her son, and it paralyzed her, and she had the guilt and the shame because she just felt like had she been doing something different at that time instead of what she was doing, maybe it would not have happened, as if someone she was accepting what had happened as hers when it was really not, you know. So when she came to Sister House, she cried and she cried and she cried. Um, we wound up having a balloon release for her son because the anniversary was coming up on a year. So we went and got balloons and had a balloon release. Lisa started to work with Jamila and Vicky, and she talked to me, and she just learned that her journey was hers with God, and that so was her son's, you know, and that she was not responsible for that death, you know. But it helped her. That's what I say about that thing about some have to die for others to live. You know, it helped her to live. But she struggled with that. And then she wound up having a heart surgery. She had a hip replacement. And she did all of these things as a resident here at Sister House. And now Lisa is flourishing. She can even talk about her son without crying now. You know, sometimes she can talk and laugh about the things that happen. Like she's in a whole different space about it. And so she has taken that traumatic experience, you know, and turned it into a new life, you know, and I'm really proud of her. She's in the Onyx. She's working now to soon move into her own place. And she has a daughter, so she'll be going back to her daughter, having her daughter come back to live with her. And she says she's like a new mommy, you know, and she recognizes, you know, how to cipher trauma and things like that. You know, like one doesn't have to not take ownership for something that's not rightfully hers, you know. And she talked about things that happened with her and her mom, you know, which may has a lot to do with the things that happened with her and her children. So she's growing and she's a whole lot stronger today than she was a couple of years ago. And we're really proud of Lisa.
I'm excited to hear the progress for Lisa. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that story, PB. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because she made her great wall and everything. She's
Come on, bring in that Cara love. Make that great wall. I love that. I love that. Deshaun, will you share about a time?
Yes, this one was hard because there's so many. I'm a storyteller, y'all, so I'm gonna get there. I said, Lord, give me the one that I can, get to the points and come on and bring it on home. Yeah. So this was particularly a mom who was, a black contractor. She was a part of so many like female leadership groups, right? She was an aspiring mom on the west side of Chicago. And she was recently widowed, from natural causes. And her son, who she called Dreamboat, was their last son that her and her husband had. And good young man, loved baseball, and I could tell this story, right? Because I was a witness to this story. I never met him though. Right. But I can tell you this about his story and her story. And she got that phone call that so many Chicagoans who lose or have their family members taken due to senseless gun violence. And she got that phone call that her son had been shot on the basketball court. And it was a retaliatory action because he had determined as a mentor and voice in community that he wasn't going to let the young boys who were on that ground have an altercation. And they went home and they decided that they were going to punish him for raising this to their consciousness. And so she gets that call and she is frozen and cannot believe, as so many do. And I just want to start by saying our organization was able to be there immediately at the hospital with her. And what I'll say also uniquely about her is that she understood the influence of her position in community because they were there ready to do whatever she said do. Y'all know how this go, right? You hit me, and she was auntie, right? So if auntie say, go hit back, you go hit back, right? But that day she said, in that moment, and I try not to get emotional about it, in that moment, even in my own grief, even in my own pain, I said, I'm going to tame the flame, and I'm not going to be a part of this vicious cycle of violence and trauma. I don't understand it all, but I refuse to be a part of it continuing, because how I feel in this moment, I want no other mother to ever feel how I feel in this moment. And so we witnessed that with her. But she also knew after that event, when someone who is good and on the right path is taken to such senseless violence, what must one do? And she went for mental health services. She came as a member of our community as Chicago survivors. She went through the 6 months of intensive case management. And I can tell you personally, because this was at a time when I was a family support specialist, I was her supportive counselor at that time. And I said to this sister, whose name I don't have to speak, but once I tell the story, you can look it up and probably find it, is that we're going to get you psychiatric support too. Because I can see in this scale of intervention, you need more. Are you open? She says, I'm open because I want to live. Because I want to live, right? I don't just want to survive. I want to live. So she did that. And she was a part of all of our youth programming with the grandchildren who remained, put them in our grief camps, put them in our community of survivors groups that she was a part of. She returned back to work, was promoted, and then determined in a pivot in life that I'm just going to be my own private business contractor. This is how I'm going to write my next chapter, right? She did that. She did that. And then I said, how you feel about being on the board? Because it's 5 years later, I believe your voice should be represented. She became a board member. And today she is the chairman of our board. And she forges this mission in places that I don't have contracts with the building associations and all of these in construction. She's in that world, right? But she is able to see that. She has her story. I witnessed her story. And for me, that is the finest evidence of how one grows beyond that trauma with that lived experience. She can reach ones I can't. I reach who I can. She reach who she can. We reach who we can. And we see stories like this evolve. I made it through, y'all. I didn't know if I was going to do that one, but I made it. I got
We made it. We all here with you, baby.
it.
We made it through. We made it through together. This is our community that we're forming right now, right? I appreciate that story, Deshaun. Thank you very much. All right. While community-based organizations are doing the transformative work, as we just heard, systemic change is also very critical. Dr. Ige, looking at this through a citywide public health lens, how has the city reduced structural barriers that have historically prevented Black residents from accessing mental health care?
Thank you so much. Part of why I enjoy this spaces is just learning from you all, from those who are in the thick of this. What I've heard from you today, loud and strong, is just dealing with grief. Our communities are going through so much. The stories that you've told right now resonate so deeply. And some of the shifts that we are trying to make in the system is to meet people where they are. If we apply the trauma informed lens, if stigma is a problem, then how do we leverage those with lived experience and meet people where they are? People want to feel understood. And first is doing the work of trying to understand where people are. Many people are not ready for psychiatric treatment. Many people are not ready for a mental health clinic. So instead of just having that conversation, we have introduced what we call healing arts, where people come from different traditions and people have used different ways to process their emotions. We offer art classes, we offer song therapy, we offer many different expression um, of arts. And in those spaces, people get to share their stories. And like others have shared stories, I've heard stories of I didn't even know how to deal with the emotions that I was wrestling with. And I came into this class and they're just doing the meditation or the yoga. And that's how I started. And then I heard other people who were feeling the way that I did. And they said to me, oh, but I'm also doing therapy. And from listening to them, I thought, okay, I will also be able to let me try the therapy. And that is how we have got a lot of people in stages comfortable with talking about mental health and engaging in therapy by meeting people where they are. If you're not ready for psychiatric sessions, if you're not ready for group therapy, maybe healing arts is an option. Now, understanding our context, again, trauma informed lens. Instead of saying, take time off work, schedule child care, get on a transportation to come to our clinic, why don't we offer telehealth services? On your phone, in your home, if that is more comfortable for you to make that available. 62% of our services now are telehealth. Today, I was sharing with my board some of the plans for 2026. And what we have found is, again, not asking people to cross barriers to come to us. Those of us who are more privileged with the resources, we should do the work of meeting people where they are. And where are people? People are in food pantries. People are in houses of worship. People are in the communities working, with Sister House and Chicago Survivors, because there are people in those spaces who understand them, who look like them, who can relate to them, instead of saying, no, you have to go to ivory towers and institutions that are not welcoming. And we have moved our services from just clinic-based services to now community-based partnership, to now school-based partnership, to now houses of worship-based partnership, as part of how we are making the system responsive to the communities that we serve. We want people, regardless of immigration status, regardless of insurance status, to be able to get care wherever they are, not asking them to jump through hoops to come to us. So these are some of the things that we have done, but mostly, like you all, I'm a storyteller. That is how our communities roll. People want to feel understood. People want to have hope that this thing that I'm feeling, other people felt it, and other people have found a way to transition. So creating the spaces for conversation and more storytelling. We had a campaign about 2 years ago that was called Unspoken, and it was a platform for just young people on social media, because they don't call, they don't talk to people, they just text. So how or they just with social media. So what if we created a social media platform where they can engage with their contemporaries and talk about some of these things? So these are some of the ways we need to be creative in adapting the systems to meet people where they are. And we're open to other ideas. How do we um, reduce stigma, remove barriers, and help people embrace hope? Embrace hope, because without hope you're not seeking care, without hope you're not doing your therapy session, without hope you're not taking your medication, because like, what's the point?
What's the
So how
point?
do we inspire hope? And it is from all the stories, PB, Jashan, such powerful. I mean, your chair of your board has a lived experience. I mean, what can be more powerful than that in inspiring hope? And like other mothers who have suffered grief, and in my background is said there is no grief like a mother who has lost a child. How do you console a mother who has lost a child, is what they say in my,
Yeah.
But what you have described today is that there are ways to console a mother who has lost a child in a way that they can heal and contribute to life again. And they get to a place where they say, I want to live. Isn't that what we're all hoping for? That our communities say, I want to live, that I have not just given up hope. That is remarkable.
That's powerful, actually, Dr. Ige. That's extremely powerful. I want to follow up on that, Dr. Ige. As we think about sustainable solutions for eliminating barriers, where do you see the greatest opportunity of collaboration between the public health leaders, community organizations, and the people with the lived experiences, because that's important.
Yes. When I started, people say, yes, clinics, clinics, clinic. And I said, I believe in clinic. I want people to have options, but I believe for the people, by the people. I have to acknowledge, I know that sometimes the public health sector suffers from what I call the Christopher Columbus syndrome, where you go into a community and say, yay, I found something. You didn't find anything. People have been there before you. People have had solutions before you came. So how do we honor that? How do we honor that? That there is collective wisdom, there is community wisdom. There are already people in the community who have been solving problems before parachuting into a community and say, you know what, I'm the solution to your problem. It's, it is, it, we, through our trauma, through all the faces, through all the attacks on the Black community, we have survived. We have found collective processes to preserve our communities against all odds. We have to recognize that. We have to acknowledge that. We have to celebrate that. So I have a commitment to preserve community partnership. What I said to my board today, and it's on the internet and it's open, is partnership, partnership, partnership. Public health has to have the public in it. You cannot do public health alone. And you cannot do it without collective wisdom. We have to have the intellectual humility to say it's not just psychiatrists, it's not just psychologists, it's not just, there are many people who are able to be part of the healing journey. And we have to respect and value lived experience as much as we value a PhD degree. Because I have seen people do things that I, with my MD degree, have not been able to do just by someone saying, you know what, this is my story. So that is my commitment to preserve the community infrastructure, the community safety net, and to ensure that we can contribute to that preservation by resourcing you all to be able to continue to do the work that you do and to let people know that whatever is comfortable for you, if you're where you are right now is I want to go to Chicago Survivor, that is where I feel welcome. We want to be able to preserve that for you. And whenever you get to the readiness of like, okay, now I'm ready to see a psychiatrist, we'll be there also waiting for you. Um, so that is our promise to our community, and that is my advocacy to all stakeholders that um, we have to honor community. We have to honor community wisdom and invest in that.
What you're saying is absolutely so powerful about the voice of the community, and having that drive the solutions forward, because that's where it lives, to be completely honest. I mean, we cannot, to your point, come in and tell people what to do with their own lives. They are the solution with for their own lives, right? And we have to be able to acknowledge that, right? So we know that trauma just doesn't show up in therapy rooms, right? It shows up in every part of our life, including our relationships with money and stability. Patricia, based on your work with women at the Sister House and Job Seekers at Care Collective, why is it so important to approach conversations about budgeting and finance through this trauma informed lens?
Because the lack of budgeting or managing your finances can bring about severe trauma. It is known that a happy husband makes one that's able to provide for his family, right? Take a man's money, there's a problem. There's lack of resources and things like that, lack of employment opportunities. And so once you're able to obtain the finance that you need is very important to manage them. People go through severe depression because of lack of finances or being able to take care of their family and things like that. When we get depressed, and oftentimes, unfortunately, the first thing they do is take it out on the one that's closest to them. And then that means there's trauma for the wife because there's domestic violence and things like that. So it is very important to learn how to manage your finances and how to have a respect for a paycheck, prioritizing, yeah, things like that. So, yeah, we try to make it a holistic approach as possible here at Sister House. And Luckily, again, that's another piece that they can get through Cara as well, you know.
Yeah, money absolutely causes stress. I know, and when we're unable to pay our bills, we start spinning our wheels, right? And we work every day. So, if you can imagine someone who's dealing with a level of trauma who doesn't have the right resources, what that does for them in their thinking, right? Um, all right, ladies. I mean, we talked a lot about systems, organizations, and policy, but change happens every day, one person at a time. Jashawn, for those watching today, what is one action that they can take right now to help create a safer, more affirming space for people that are navigating trauma?
I would say commit to be a forever learner. Just commit to always wanting to know more and take action behind what you've gained. Don't let it just be a good feel good moment and, you know, but determine that you will put action and honor what you heard with action.
PB, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks, Jashawn, because I agree. Um, and I think it's important, and I've heard, I think each one of you ladies say it again, just being able to ask, like, what happened to you, and be that active listener, do what you can to lean in, and do just that sometimes, because sometimes if we start opening our mouth too quickly, they shut down. So just be an ear for them, and know that, let them know that it is a safe space.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ige, would you like to round us out in this question?
Yes, I'll go back to where we started, which is being trauma informed. And that aligns with what PB is saying. Please, before you make any conclusion about someone, ask what
Mhm.
happened to you. Let us push ourselves to unlearn some of the things that we had learned before, um, by staying open to learning about people's context and what happened to them. Number two is tell your story. What we have heard loud and clear, lived experience matter. It encourages other people. It inspires hope. It helps people overcome stigma. And the generational silence has really impacted a lot of us. And by, addressing that silence, many celebrities now are using social media as a platform to normalize that, needing mental health care or needing support is not a strange thing. Mental health is health, period. So those are the two things that I will leave with you. So if you have a family member, if you have been impacted by trauma, if your loved ones are navigating trauma, we want you to know that there are resources available in the city. We have clinics, we have partners. Every single community area in the city has a provider that we are supporting to provide services. There are more than 200 locations citywide that the city is investing in to ensure mental health services are available. And if you are still not certain which one is suitable, you can call 211. Someone will help you navigate. The five community areas that have the highest unmet mental health needs, we have navigators, community health workers on the ground who can help people connect to services that are appropriate. And we have our clinics. We have 7 clinics across the city that we run as a city, also providing services. So we want options to be available. We want to meet you where you are, and we want you to know that services are available and support is available, for anyone who is going through stuff and they just need to figure out what is going on, and they need some help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I cannot believe it's already been 55 minutes. Thank you all for your insights and your time today. In the 5 minutes that we have remaining, I would like to open the floor for questions from our audience. If you haven't already, please submit any questions you have in our comment section and we'll try to get to you. We do have one question. Kathy asks, this question is for everyone, but specifically for Jashawn and Patricia. What is the greatest need of your organizations to better serve the mental health needs of your clients? Who would like to take that first? Jashawn?
Yeah, I'll jump right in and just say, consistent contributors, right? Who can find ways within our program to definitely invest for sustainability and, to stretch that reach and support, require those level of investments. And then secondly, if you have a skill, if you have some form of a trade or support that can be offered to us and add to the work, I am always open, right? Because I am a community-based organization with a staff of 19, and we are a mighty army trying to do a major, mighty, massive work in the city of Chicago. So if you want to give your time, your talent, and your treasure, please come and see us. Please.
Absolutely. PB?
Very good, Jashawn, because that's where I was going to go with it. Volunteers. Yes, if you can find the time to volunteer to the organization. Yes, and use your expertise to help these ladies.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. In the chat, we're just almost about time. And I want to take this moment to thank our panelists again and for all of you that have tuned in online. In the chat, we've put information about Chicago Survivors, Sister House, and the Department of Public Health for the City of Chicago if you like to learn more about the amazing work that they are doing. Conversations with Cara is a series of discussions we host throughout the year on topics around our work to eradicate poverty. Stay up to date on upcoming conversations as well as the latest and the greatest at Cara Collective by following at Cara Chicago on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and signing up for our newsletter in the link in the chat. We hope to see you at our next conversation this summer. Stay tuned for more details. Thank you again for joining and make it a great day. Bye, you all.